U.S. President Donald Trump is meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy right now. They will soon be joined by other European leaders. The summit comes just days after President Trump met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska. No peace deal came out of that meeting. And now Trump is calling on Zelenskyy to make concessions to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Here's some of what we heard from them just a short time ago.
Zelenskyy, you say in the Post on X today, Russia must end this war, which it itself started. President Trump, you say President Zelenskyy of Ukraine can end the war with Russia almost immediately if he wants to. Which is it?
No, I think that's true. I think we're going to have a meeting. I think if everything works out well today, we'll have a trilat. And I think there will be a reasonable chance of ending the war when we do that.
And, is this the end of the road for American support for Ukraine? Is today's meeting deal or no deal?
I can never say that. It's never the end of the road. People are being killed, and we want to stop that. So I would not say it's the end of the road. No, I think we have a good chance of doing it. It's been almost 4 years now that a lot of people were killed last week. A lot of people last week. I mean, millions of people killed, but a lot of people last week for whatever reason. A big number, a lot of soldiers, on both sides. And I know the president, I know myself, and I believe Vladimir Putin wants to see it ended.
And as you met with Putin on Friday, today you've got President Zelenskyy here. As you listen to Russia and Ukraine, which side has the better cards? Right?
Well, I don't want to say that. I'm just here to be, look, this isn't my war. This is Joe Biden's war. He's the one that had a lot to do with this happening, and we want to get it ended, and we want it to end good for everybody. We want it to end good. The people of Ukraine have suffered incredibly.
President Zelenskyy, are you prepared to keep sending Ukrainian troops to their deaths for another couple years, or are you going to agree to redraw the maps?
Thank you for your question. So, first of all, we live under each day attacks. That today have been a lot of attacks and a lot of wounded people, and the child was dead, small one year and a half. So we need to stop this war, to stop Russia, and we need support American and European partners. And we will do our best for this. I think we show that we are strong people, and we supported the idea of the United States, personally of President Trump, to stop this war, to make a diplomatic way of finishing this war. And we are ready for trilateral, as President said. This is a good signal about trilateral. I think this is very good. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes. If the peace deal will be achieved, are you going to be willing to send American peacekeepers to Ukraine?
Well, we're going to work with Ukraine. We're going to work with everybody, and we're going to make sure that if there's peace, the peace is going to stay long term. This is very long term. We're not talking about a 2-year peace and then we end up in this mess again. We're going to make sure that everything's good. We'll work with Russia. We're going to work with Ukraine. And we're going to make sure it works. And I think if we can get to peace, it's going to work. I have no doubt about it.
Okay, that is what we saw and heard in the Oval Office just a few moments ago. The CBC's Ashley Burke joins us now live from Washington with more on all of this. So, Ashley, what is the latest at this point? Of course, we are keeping a close eye, and our viewers can see it there on the side of their screen for those European leaders. But what did we hear just a short time ago?
Yeah, Hillary, this is a really high-stakes day for Ukraine's president. He's got to really diplomatically deal with Trump here, try to get him on his side, but at the same time not upset him to the point where he says, look, you're on your own here. And he's got European leaders waiting the sidelines to join their talks that are happening right now behind closed doors to try and really show a united front. Ukraine's president wanted Donald Trump to get Russia to agree to a ceasefire at that summit in Alaska on Friday. That didn't happen, but the U.S. is promising Ukraine some security guarantees. We saw Trump today also reiterate that. And so far, the big development we saw come out of that meeting is that Trump isn't ruling out sending American troops to Ukraine. It's an issue the U.S. president said that he plans on talking to Zelensky and other European leaders about today. Trump has said that Zelenskyy must agree to some of Russia's conditions, including that Ukraine agree to never join NATO and agree to cede Crimea. But he is also promising, as I mentioned, those security guarantees. The Europeans are going to be really pushing today for the details and what exactly that would look for. That's really what they're going to be trying to nail down today.
And Ashley, what is going to be happening next? Just walk us through what we know in terms of itinerary for the rest of the day.
So right now, Zelenskyy and Trump are meeting together. They're going to bring in those European leaders, as I mentioned, afterwards. And when that meeting wraps up, then Trump said that he's going to be talking to Putin. He plans on phoning him, and that Russia's president is expecting that call. Trump plans on raising the idea of a trilateral meeting between himself, Putin, and Zelenskyy during that conversation. And he said if they land that meeting, the three of them together, in his view, there is a good chance of maybe ending the war. And if not, he says the fighting will continue. So for Trump today, that is what he's after. For Zelenskyy, he's looking for much more and is trying not to be pushed into a corner by Trump and have to concede and give up land that he does not want to give to Russia.
Which, of course, is what makes it significant that there are those European leaders there as well, in case there is sort of any push on Zelenskyy. So much to be watching for on that front, Ashley. We will be speaking again throughout the day, but for now, thank you. The CBC's Ashley Burke for us there in Washington. The CBC's former Moscow correspondent, Chris Brown, joins us once again with more on what we just heard, Chris. Very significant, very different from what we heard in February as well between Trump and Zelenskyy in the Oval Office there. What do you make of that?
Well, I think going into this, the Europeans and Zelenskyy had two main goals. One was to avoid what could be a terrible transatlantic split in strategy between the Europeans and Ukraine and Trump and the U.S. administration. That was the first goal. And the second goal was to try to be the last voice in Trump's head and to pull him away from what sounded like his acceptance of a lot of the Russian terms for ending this war, terms that really are a no-starter for the Ukrainians. Essentially, Putin's vision of Ukraine is of a vassal state, a country with a administration beholden to Russia, a rump army in a rump territory, and certainly not part of NATO or any other important security establishment. And for the Ukrainians, that just sounds like a recipe for more war, more invasion, and nothing they want to sign up to. So all of that is part of what their agenda is. And I guess from what we've seen today, all you can really say at this point is so far so good. No pitfalls, a very different tone, as others have mentioned before. What I think is interesting is that Trump is continuing to hold out this idea of a trilateral summit with Putin, Zelenskyy, and himself. Now, not Trump, but Putin and Zelenskyy have only met once in 2019, just a few months after Zelenskyy was elected as a fresh-faced president. He was just coming out of show business, was a comedian, promised to end the war back then, which just included parts of eastern Ukraine. And that meeting didn't really do a whole lot. Obviously, it ended up leading in some ways to the invasion that happened just 3 years later. And since then, Putin has not shown any indication whatsoever of sitting with Zelenskyy, in part because it gives Zelenskyy status. It makes him seem like an equal to Putin. And that is absolutely something the Russian leader does not believe in. So are we even going to get to this trilateral summit? So far, Putin's strategy has been, in hockey terms, to rag the puck, shoot it down the ice, have everyone skate after it, delay for time. My guess is that's probably what's going to happen with this summit as well. I don't suspect Putin has a whole lot of interest in that.
Possibly doesn't have a whole lot of interest in that. And the other thing that caught my attention there, Chris, in terms of where we go from here with Putin, is this idea that Trump is open to this idea of some sort of security guarantee. He did not say that this was the end of the road for U.S. support, for U.S. money, the help of U.S. intelligence, even leaving open here the possibility of more American involvement. So talk to us about that, your impressions here of what Trump is saying about the U.S.'s future with its involvement in Ukraine versus what you think Putin would be willing to accept.
Well, it's an interesting thing, and probably the most consequential statement that came out of this of these remarks. The Americans have not, until now, even under Joe Biden, shown any interest at all in having American boots on the ground in Ukraine. And when asked directly about that by the media there, Trump didn't rule it out. I suspect he would have a fair bit of opposition, even within his own Republican Party and the MAGA movement, to doing that. But Russia's position on having troops, foreign troops on the ground in Ukraine, is quite nuanced and quite specific. At the beginning of this war, at the beginning of the invasion in 2022, there were a series of meetings in Istanbul, and the Russians kind of floated this idea that they would be open to having international forces involved. But the big catch is that they would be under the auspices of the United Nations. And that would give Russia, which has a UN veto, an immense say in whether these troops were deployed, how were they used. And of course, that is absolutely nothing like what the Ukrainians see and what the Europeans see as turning Ukraine into this, as Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, has used this term, iron porcupine, which can't be attacked, make it very difficult for Russia to attack. That's not what the Russian idea is. So how does Trump see bridging these two very different versions? That's one of the key issues that we'll have to look for coming out of this.
And Chris, I'm hoping that we can draw here on your experience as CBC's correspondent in Moscow before the Russian authorities shut down that bureau. How do you think today's meeting, what is playing out right now in Washington, moments ago in the Oval Office as well, how will that be playing out in Russia and on Russian state media?
Well, Russian state media, they tend to echo Kremlin talking points. In fact, sometimes they even go harder and farther and sound more bellicose and belligerent than what the Kremlin does. Within Russia, there's a fair bit of support for the war. There's also a fair bit of support for not having the war, but what Russians really don't want to see is any kind of a climb down. And so on that, Russian people are fairly in sync with the Kremlin. There hasn't really been a huge bite yet from all of these economic sanctions, lower oil prices and so forth. Yes, inflation is going up. Yes, it costs them more for their eggs and bread in the store, but not to a point that it's going to shift any Russian attitude. So I think the Kremlin's still got people. They haven't lost the country, as it were. And at the same time, Ukrainians are largely backing Zelenskyy. Zelensky's a fairly polarizing figure within Ukraine in many ways. He has a sizable opposition that he faces in the Rada when he goes in there. And we just saw large protests in the streets of Kyiv over issues of in terms of corruption when he tried to change the anti-corruption rules there. But when it comes to this, when it comes to how he stands up against Putin, siding with the Americans, people do rally behind him, and I don't think there's really any pressure on Zelenskyy at this moment to give in to any of Putin's demands. Ukrainians do not want to see their country sliced and diced up.
Which, of course, will make the future path forward here even more complicated as Trump, Zelenskyy, and these European leaders are sitting down. For now, Chris, we're just going to leave it there, but we do appreciate this. Thank you so much for everything today, being part of our coverage. It is greatly appreciated. The CBC's Chris Brown for us there in London.